Hello, I'm Greg EG.IdrA Fields, and this is a replay review brought to you by EvilGeniuses.net. Today I'll be looking at me versus Dignitas Killer in a ladder game on Entombed Valley. You see me as the red Zerg in the top right, Killer as the blue Zerg in the top left. Killer is a pretty strong player. He's had really great performance in a lot of IEMs, almost always the South American representative going into those tournaments. And he's kind of underrated as a whole, as he was outshined by Dignitas' big three for a long time. Didn't get a lot of play behind Select Show and Naniwa. So he doesn't get a whole lot of attention, but he's one of the better Zergs in the Americas. He has a very aggressive early game style, but he can transition into macro pretty well from it, which makes him very dangerous. Those are always the scariest players. The ones who can be cheesy, can throw you off guard at any time in the game, but can also then play a macro game to back it up, so you can't just play purely defensive versus them. So he has a really scary style to play against. It can be very difficult to deal with. And here we'll just see a ZvZ. And I actually kind of demonstrate my favorite tactic for dealing with a player like that, which is to just be aggressive myself and throw them out of their element and not allow them to control the game, because that's where they really excel, when they can choose what to do and then make you respond to it. And just a great way to deal with that is to be aggressive. We're both opening up 15 hatchery here. However, I went gas before pool. He went pool before gas, so I'll get slightly faster speedling. However, he'll have faster queens and drones. You see his pool finishes first, but I have more gas. It's a very, very minor difference, not really relevant at all. Also see pretty much identical so far. A couple of queens on the way. The initial pair of Zerglings. I always use the initial pair of Zerglings to scout my opponent. You really need to know how quickly they're getting to banelings. If they're going banelings immediately, you need to get obviously your own baneling nest immediately, but also put down a spine crawler and potentially have your two queens walling off the ramp. Very, very important there. It's always, you just absolutely have to be aware of that. Otherwise, the game can just end if they have a couple of banelings in your mana line, if they get in there before you're really prepared for it. There, it's always very important to try and limit your opponent's scouting for the same reasons. If they don't know whether or not you're going really fast banelings, then obviously they have to prepare for it, or they could potentially die to it. And having to prepare for it is a pretty big resource investment early on. I lost that drone, I had to put down that spine crawler, making extra Zerglings. So I'm much more, not nearly as well off economically as I could be if I could just play purely greedy, produce pure drones. So denying that scouting information with those first two queens like I did, very, very important and worthwhile, worth even delaying your inject for a couple of mana. Here comes my own baneling nest. I put down that early spine crawler. I saw him producing drones with my Zerglings, so I knew I wasn't in a ton of danger. Spine crawler, very, very helpful, especially on a map with a tight ramp like this. If I put a couple of queens on there and have the spine crawler, I'm very, very safe. So here I saw those Zerglings come out with my Overlord. Overlord placement of utmost importance in early game ZvZ. You have to know where the banelings are on the map, where the Zerglings are if they're being aggressive, how many Zerglings they're sending out. So very important to watch both for where the Zerglings are coming from, then have Overlords out in front of your base, watch where they're morphing and how many there are, and then watching for their third base. That's what your Overlords need to be doing early on in ZvZ. Here we can see I'm now into pure unit production mode, as I know he's going to be aggressive. Have one baneling on the way, and here we have the two queens joining in defense. Queens are very, very good defensively against Ling baneling. Very important to include them. Also, as we saw there, sacrificing a Zergling or two for a baneling kill, always very worthwhile, obviously. The banelings, once the banelings are gone, it's very easy to clean up an attack unless it's a massive amount of Zerglings. So, killing off the banelings is your priority. I should have been focusing the banelings there with the spine crawler. A little bit of a blunder by me. It's going to cost me here. There's a lot of different things going on there. It's very difficult to manage, but like I said, killing the banelings should be your priority. So that spine crawler should have been targeted on the banelings. However, it works out pretty okay for me here. I lost that one queen, but lost no drones, and I have a pretty big economic lead because he invested a lot more into that attack than I invested in the defense. We see that I'm up 38 harvesters to 29, which is pretty great for me. And a good way to capitalize on an early advantage like that in ZvZ is to actually go for a Roche baneling timing. We see me put down these two gases. I put them down there as he already has Zergling in the main. If he sees a second gas here, he'll be suspicious. Very important to hide information like that. Also here, some light continued pressure. At this point, he knows he's not going to kill me. He's just trying to do a little damage, make it worthwhile. But obviously, I'm able to hold that off pretty well. And that was a good baneling detonation. Obviously, anytime you can get two banelings to kill three or more, that's cost efficient, so you want to go for that. Roach Warren on the way. You need to go 3 gas with this because the powerful part of it is going to be the massive banelings, which are gas-heavy units. You want to build up a big gas bank, even though you can't spend it on your roaches. Send your zerglings out and morph them all into banelings out here in front of your opponent's base, and then go in with your existing roaches and zerglings plus that massive banelings. Very, very powerful. And we can see all my roaches in production. Also, a huge bank ready to spend on that. You have to make sure you save up resources and make a bunch of roaches at once. It's just the most efficient way to do it, the quickest way. Also, we can see still a bunch of minerals. I didn't quite time this out right. It was a reactive thing. This isn't a planned build. I saw his aggression fail. I knew I had an economic advantage, so I figured this would be the best way. So I have a lot of extra minerals built up, so I'm going to go ahead and take my 3rd hatchery at the same time I do this. If you can afford it, that's a great thing to do. It just means that your attack's not an all-in. It just means you have to do damage and put your opponent behind economically, and then you'll have that 3rd hatchery to fall back on. You can just play defensively. I don't actually have to kill him with this attack, as I would if I was on 2 bases. And here, as we can see, what I was talking about, morphing all those banelings right outside their opponent's base, cut down on the travel time. Here, he's doing the right thing. He's putting down a bunch of panic spine crawlers, but I caught him trying to catch up economically. I had that big economic lead early from his failed aggression. Very important to keep your banelings away from his banelings. Obviously, if he had blown up 2 banelings on all of those, it would have been a very efficient trade for him. So I managed to keep them alive and going in. And also important, just run your banelings around. Don't allow them to actually attack anything, because as is, they were just taking a bunch of damage from those roaches. They were absorbing the roach fire, and then once they die, once they blow up, they still do the same amount of damage. So it just absorbs fire as well as dealing damage instead of simply killing off the roaches. Very efficient little trick you should keep in mind whenever using banelings like that. And here he does manage to hold it off. However, behind this, I've been producing drones. I have another hatchery, I have my lair on the way, I have double Evo on the way, and if we look at the income, I actually only have a 4 harvester advantage, but that 3rd hatchery is absolutely crucial. As soon as I get that up, and as soon as I see him put up his 3rd base, I know I can make a bunch of drones and just saturate this base and then be economically way, way ahead. So there's a huge potential advantage in this as long as I react properly to however he plays. I know that I only have to be defensive until he tries to take his 3rd base, and then I can just go ahead and capitalize on my massive economic lead. So even though I didn't have a huge harvester lead coming out of that, the 3rd hatchery gave me a big economic lead. Killing off these rocks just to make defending a little bit easier. As I said, I know that as long as he doesn't have the 3rd base, I just have to, he's essentially all in, because he doesn't have the same access to resources that I do. So I just have to keep producing units. Mixing in a drone here or there, as I feel pretty safe, but mainly producing units, getting my upgrades, and holding on to this defensive position. That's another great thing about this map. If you get yourself into that situation, you have these ramps leading into both bases. That really, really works out well when you're playing defensively. His attack on the way, he has decided to just go ahead and go all in. He knows he's not going to catch up to this 3rd base of mine, so he's just going to go in for the kill. And again, Overlord positioning, he's going to run back and forth between here. I have to know where I need to be to defend it. Having Overlords out to watch his unit movement, very, very important. Zerglings getting in, get scouting information, to make sure there's no funny tech, not a roach hydra all incoming or something. And then just unit positioning, making sure you have the bigger concave, taking advantage of this. You see how I have my units a little bit back? That forces his army to sit on this ramp where it's going to be narrower, where he's not going to have as many units attacking as I can. And again, the unit movement, just mirroring him. Very, very simple stuff. And we can see my lead compounding up to a 30 supply lead, and he realizes there's no way he's going to break that and that he's all in, and he GG's. This has been a replay review brought to you by evilgeniuses.net. If you enjoyed this, please check out that site for more great content produced by Evil Geniuses. Thank you for watching.